All right, should we get started?
It's a great idea.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Susan Smolarek. I'm responsible for business development at Walworth County Economic Development Alliance. I would like to introduce to you Liz Oplatka, your dynamic instructor for top-level leadership, hosted by WCEDA at Gateway Technical College Elkhorn campus. With a passion for cultivating leadership excellence, Liz brings a unique blend of expertise and enthusiasm to guide you through the involving principles of top-level leadership. Get ready to embark on an enlightening journey under Liz's leadership wisdom. I present to you Liz Oplatka.
Wow. There's music.
Don't
Thank you very much. It's really kind of you to do. So we're here today to talk about a program that we've run once already and we're getting ready to run again. The nice folks at WCEDA call it top level leadership. It's a kind of leadership development group for folks who are at senior executive levels or getting ready to enter senior and executive level positions in our Walworth County businesses. What I'd like to do is to describe for all of you the program that we have here with WCEDA. If I don't know whether I'm just going to share my screen with you for just a moment here. As you can see, it's in total a 40-hour program in 4 separate modules. We begin by defining what we mean by leadership and the skills of leadership that you all not only want to share with your top leadership team, but throughout your organization. We talked about qualities of leadership as well. Probably the most meaningful part of all of this is something called DISC behavioral assessment. With DISC, what we're able to do is to give you a kind of decoder about why do people behave the way they do? Why do they act that way? How do I act? And so we build a lot of self-awareness as well as the ability to build relationships among people based on behavioral style. We also do a lot of work and so with that comes also, so we do a kind of a DISC event with all of you, and then we also offer 2 hours of individual DISC coaching. If you decided you wanted to send more than one of your leaders to the program, we can offer at no additional charge DISC comparisons that allow both of you to talk about how your behavior, how one person's behavior affects the other. I find that this really leads to very strong empathy building as well as self-awareness, both key skills in leadership. We also talk about communication. We do some work in communication. So we talk about how to offer good, strong feedback communication. I'm not talking about the annual review. I'm talking about the day-to-day, how are we doing together kind of communication. And with that, we also offer a free communication styles assessment that you can take back to your teams and offer to your teams as well. We follow that up with some pretty sophisticated work in human relations as it applies to our work. My background is in organizational psychology and counseling, and I'm a board certified leadership coach. And so I look at everything from a human relations perspective. And so one of the things, and a science perspective, one of the things that we will talk about is how understanding the way we give people directions can have unintended consequences. Is anybody here familiar with the invisible gorilla experiment? Has anybody here ever heard of that? There's a psychologist working at the University of Illinois who did an experiment where he had people passing a basketball, and some had white shirts and some had black shirts. And the folks in the white shirts, people watching, were supposed to count how many times they passed the basketball. but they were supposed to ignore the passes of the people in the black shirts. At some point, a person dressed in a gorilla suit walks through the scene, thumps
Yeah.
chest, and walks off. And fully 80% of people don't see the gorilla. And what we're talking about here is something known as attentional blindness. And attentional blindness can have some very serious consequences inside of organizations. We'll also talk about building both emotional and social intelligences. This is about self-awareness and how we affect others and how others affect us. And we'll talk about building empathy on your teams and understanding. There is a topic that, especially during the pandemic, we found that is extraordinarily important to organizations, and that's how to build a smart, resilient workforce by learning from mistakes, rather than beating one another over the head with them, right? In engineering, we refer to this as the iterative process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Try, fail, learn, try again, fail at something different, learn. It's how we went to the moon, right? And we'll talk about how to build resilience on the team. I'll also teach the group how to coach and mentor, kind of a shorthand, something it usually takes, good time to learn. But we'll teach people how to coach by asking questions and how to mentor by encouraging folks to learn from our experiences, okay? We'll also talk about how to build a really strong formal performance feedback system inside of your organizations. I admit that I'm pretty opinionated on this issue. Really what we're talking about is that aligned goals are the most important thing in delivering feedback. And we'll talk about how to do that. And so we'll talk about how to build really effective team-centered approaches and how to deal with both negative and encourage positive conflict inside of your organizations. We're going to work on and you got we also have an assessment that goes along with that so that you can understand the conflict styles of people in your organizations, and it's free, so you can offer that throughout your company. We're going to work on leading change, on they used to call it time management, and then we learned that time management isn't really a thing because time passes no matter what we do. So we're going to talk about how to manage energy inside of your organization so that people are bringing their best selves to work every day. And of course, we're going to attack issues related to employee engagement. Employee engagement is very low. We're talking about more than half of employees being disengaged at work. Those are your clock punchers, your folks lining up to leave 15 minutes before the end of a shift. A little less than a third of employees are truly engaged, bringing their best selves to work every day. Unfortunately, about 2 out of 10, so it's closer to 18% of employees are actually trying to undermine organizations. Those folks are actively disengaged, and you might have folks like that in your organizations who are doing that. Personality is what develops by about the age of 7, right? It's like a bright light that shines from within us. You can't cover it, right? But I can show you 5 people with the same personality profile, but their behaviors are completely different. At work, what we're really worried about is behavior, how people act at work, right? And so with DISC assessment, what we can do is to build understanding based on those behavioral styles. But remember that my style is not my excuse, right? I can't just say, well, I'm dominant and that's how it's always going to be. What I can do is I can say, you know what? Is my style working for me right now? And how do I relate to these other people in the workplace? It's also an excellent basis for other things, including something known as the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, based on a book by a guy named Pat Lencioni, who trained me. and these are the things that make teams really effective. It is also the basis of something called DISC 363, which is a strong 360-degree performance appraisal program. And we have a program that works with that, right, work with companies with that. And what they do is they complete a project. And as the team is completing a project, they're learning that if we change our behaviors in these ways, it makes completion so much easier, right? Now the Kolbe is used mostly in situations where you are trying to rule out personality disorders, right? Because it'll show you that. I do want to warn people about using assessments in hiring. The law tells us that you can't use it for more than 20% of a hiring decision. It also tells us that knowing a person's personality type is necessary to them doing their job. I've been hearing a lot about things like the predictive index. As far as I know, that is not one of the approved assessments. The Kolbe is. Now, they're useful for other things. You can't hire based on the DISC either, nor the Myers-Briggs type inventory. There are a number of assessments that you can use in the hiring decision, but for no more than 20% of the hiring decision, and personality has to be important to that person's job. So if you're hiring a cop, if you're hiring a surgeon, if you're hiring a CEO, if you're hiring a CFO, right? You want to know whether that person is a narcissist, whether that person has a borderline personality disorder, whether that person has an antisocial personality disorder. And that's what that's used for. Folks do all the other stuff all the time. It just isn't, it leaves you open to action.
Liz,
Yeah.
it's Derek. Yeah, just
Hey, Derek.
curious, could you talk a little bit, because you ran a top level session last in 2023 there. And I wonder if you don't have to, say necessarily who it was, but just a little bit about, the group and how things
Sure.
progressed and just
Yeah.
from the outcomes that you saw from that. Because I think it was it was pretty exciting,
Yeah, it was extraordinary. We had 3 companies present. I operate with Vegas rules, which means that what's said in the room stays in the room. And everyone followed that. And the idea was that it was a kind of leadership support group, right? As we were bringing up these issues and talking through all of these things, we were talking about how do we apply these things, and the organizations were learning from one another about, the leaders from the organizations were learning from one another about what had and hadn't worked for them. Also, because we spread this out over a period of months, everyone gets a chance to try out stuff, right? And then come back and say, this is how well the tool worked for me. I need some more work with the tool. How can we really use it? We did find that in those organizations, among the people who attended, there were people who were promoted inside of those organizations. And we did have a CEO with us who talks a lot about how her approach to her organization developed very positively as a result of being involved, and that was wonderful. So that's the program that we're offering right now. Just so you guys know, I've been with Gateway for about 10 years. I've been practicing long before that. My background in education are in organizational psychology, yes, and counseling as an employee assistance counselor. So I worked for Loyola University Health System as an EAP counselor there, and also as a coach, board certified in coaching. It's a certification that says you got to have the master's before you can even begin to study. I also, before that, early in a previous career, I was a journalist. I ran newspapers and became known for business turnarounds. That's what brought my husband and myself here from the Chicago area. Was taking over a small company up in Milwaukee. kind of giving you a little bit of the background of kind of where I'm coming from. We've been working with our regional businesses. Like I said, I've been working with our regional businesses for about 10 years. And, you know, I think that one of the things that is important to keep in mind is that Gateway and WCEDA are tied to the local community. And, you know, I live in the Tri-County area, right? This matters. What happens to our businesses matters to me. We don't have a profit motive. I am occasionally called before the Board of Trustees of Gateway Technical College, and what they want to know is, how did you help our local companies grow? How did you help our local companies stabilize themselves? How did you help our local companies create jobs? And that's our focus in both organizations. It's just something I feel very strongly about, something I feel like I must bring up with all of you. You know, I show you guys what looks like a course. And then the first day I say to everyone, if you think this is a course, you're not going to get much out of it, right? If you think that I'm just going to share a bunch of stuff with you and tell you what to do, it's not going to work. We regularly abandon our regularly scheduled programming for the issues that you guys are facing on a regular basis. I've been working, I work with leadership from the floor, and believe me, you've got individual contributors who have a lot to contribute to the CEO. So, and when you send your folks to things like fundamentals of leadership, right? When we do that, do keep in mind that, yeah, there's scheduled programming, but we're going far, far beyond that and addressing the things that are happening in companies live. We are going to talk about these things from a very high level. Thank you all for being here today.